Imagine maxing out all your credit cards to buy this heavily armored tank.
Oh, sounds like a terrible financial decision.
Right. And you just park it right in your driveway to look incredibly intimidating to the whole neighborhood. But meanwhile, the roof of your actual house is caving in, and the kitchen is literally on fire.
Yeah, that is honestly the perfect visual for what we are looking at today.
Exactly. Welcome to this deep dive. Today's mission is looking under the hood of the 2026 Russian and Chinese economies. Because, when you see headlines about a massive influx of cheap Chinese EVs or Russia's wartime resilience, you might think it's a sign of absolute dominance.
Right, they project a lot of strengths.
They do. But beneath that geopolitical bluster, the information we have shows some really glaring structural cracks hidden right beneath the surface. So let's start with Russia, because they are literally living that tank metaphor right now.
Yeah, they really are.
I mean, their economy is technically crawling forward with like a sluggish 0.5% growth in the first half of 2026, but massive defense spending is just entirely eating the budget, creating a 2.6% deficit.
Well, and the military sector is fully funded, sure, but the civilian economy is completely absorbing that cost. The domestic fallout hitting in June 2026 is severe. It's manifesting as this massive fuel crisis.
Wait, a fuel crisis in Russia?
Yeah, exactly. Gasoline refining output has dropped by roughly a quarter. So the reality for everyday citizens is just bleak. We're talking huge price spikes at the pump and strict purchase limits of around 30 to 50 liters per vehicle.
Oh, wow. That is not a lot.
No, it's not. And in some areas of Crimea, they've actually suspended civilian fuel sales entirely just to prioritize the military.
Wait, I have to push back there for a second. If the EU is extending their sanctions, I think it was a 12-month extension, and the UK is actively hunting down the shadow maritime fleet.
Right, the off-the-books oil tankers.
Yeah, exactly. The ones Russia uses to smuggle crude and bypass price caps.
Yeah.
If all that is happening, how can we say sanctions are just in a maintenance mode? Aren't those Western policies actively strangling the domestic supply?
It's a totally fair question. But the sanctions are largely about stabilizing the pressure that's already there. They aren't really introducing massive new legislative escalations.
Obviously, I see.
The acute, immediate pain civilians are feeling at the pump today is actually coming from physical infrastructure attrition. Ukrainian strikes on energy infrastructure are physically blowing up the supply chain.
Oh, so it's actual physical damage, not just financial red tape.
Exactly. That feeds directly into these domestic shortages. And, the Russian central bank is waving massive red flags about the resulting inflation just totally wiping out civilian purchasing power.
So Russia is basically cannibalizing its own domestic economy to feed a war machine.
That's exactly what's happening.
Which is wild. But China is facing a really similar internal hollowing out. But instead of using a war to mask it, they are using an absolute flood of cheap exports.
Yeah, it's an export facade.
Right, because their 2026 growth target was just downgraded to around 4.5 to 5%. And that's despite them completely dominating the global market in EVs, batteries, and AI.
Yeah.
So what is going on there?
Well, it really comes down to a profound internal wealth shock. The state-directed industrial sector looks like an absolute juggernaut on paper, but the property sector has slumped drastically. It dropped to about 19% of GDP.
And property is huge there, right?
It is everything. To understand why that matters, you have to look at how their system works. Because China's capital controls heavily restrict investing abroad, regular citizens pour almost all their savings into domestic real estate.
Right, so it's basically their only viable wealth-building tool.
Exactly. So when developers default and property values just crater, it doesn't just hurt a financial market, it instantly wipes out the life savings of the average urban family.
Jeez. So China's economy right now is it's like a restaurant with a massive line out the door for takeout orders. Those are the exports.
I like that.
But if you look inside the actual dining room, all the tables are completely empty because the locals feel way too broke to eat out.
But that captures it perfectly. When household confidence sinks that much, people just hoard cash. And that creates this massive secondary crisis, which is the human toll.
Right, the youth unemployment rate.
Yeah, urban youth unemployment is sitting structurally elevated at roughly 15 to 17%. We're seeing the emergence of an entire wait-and-see generation.
Wait and see, like they're just giving up.
Kind of. Young people are delaying entering the job market, they're taking on informal work, and they're just losing all confidence in long-term wage progression. So the domestic consumption economy is effectively paralyzed.
Wow. Okay, so synthesizing all this, we're looking at two nations that project this fierce external power, but they are resting on deeply hollowed out domestic foundations.
Precisely.
Russia is just keeping the war machine churning at a massive, unsustainable social cost. Meanwhile, China is entirely dependent on pumping out foreign exports just to compensate for a really fearful, cautious consumer base at home.
That is the ultimate takeaway here. Both of them are surviving by just redirecting their internal decay outward.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to mull over today. If both of these global heavyweights are resting on such severely cracking domestic foundations, the question really becomes, does a collapsing internal economy make a superpower more cautious, or does it make them more likely to lash out militarily to distract their own restless citizens?